All right, welcome to Saturday versus Sunday. I'm John Barban, and the third round of the NFL draft has just ended, and still Shedeur Sanders is waiting. So I wanted to talk about why this is such a big deal. I think it maybe just has to do with him being famous. You know, his father is obviously Deion Sanders, and shines a spotlight on this kid. And maybe if we just stopped and thought about it just from an X's and O's and performance based, and let's say we just took his name off the jersey, took the fame of who his father is, and that his father's coaching him in Colorado. And let's just say it was a quarterback who went to Jackson State, then went to Colorado and had all the same statistics, but take away the Sanders name and take away Deion. Would we still be talking about him as much as we are? I highly doubt it. But would the analysts still think he was a top 10 pick or should have gone, as high as they all thought he was going? Maybe the NFL GMs just didn't have him graded in the top 3 rounds, and if he goes fourth or in the 4th round or the 5th round or whatever, that's just where all the GMs are. We talk to them all, they'd be like, yeah, that's just where I had him graded. I had with these other guys, we just had graded ahead of him, and that's that. Like nothing to do with the stories about him interviewing badly or some of the speculation that maybe it's going to be a circus dealing with him and the over the top thing that comes with Deion. I mean, not to say that he would get involved, but maybe they're just thinking it might be a big deal or a big media circus, whoever drafts him, given how over the top famous Deion is, and how could you really separate out the kid from Deion? But wherever he goes to play, he's going to be in a completely different city than his father. His father's going to be in Colorado coaching there. He's going to be busy. So I don't see how that is really the argument. But if we were going to steelman the case that it's the fame, it's this story about him interviewing poorly, and maybe he's arrogant, maybe he thinks he's better than he is, maybe at least the speculation and the media and the analysts all just think he's better because he's famous, and the actual scouts and GMs just have him graded much lower. Maybe there's this story that because of that, at least one report, I think it was anonymous too, that he interviewed very poorly. Maybe that got around from one personnel room to another, but then that makes NFL teams sound like they're just like high school kids, like passing gossip around and believing gossip and not taking their own evaluation seriously. So, I mean, I'm sure any team that was interested in QBs and had him on their board interviewed him directly, so they have their own opinion on how he was, and it doesn't matter what any other team thought about him. It only matters what that team thinks about him. So it's I think it's kind of a weak thought that somebody didn't like him and then that got around and then people started talking. I mean, if that's true, that's kind of pathetic. And that means that these personnel rooms for each team don't even trust their own evaluation, and they'll actually take into account just kind of what they hear from other people and not trust their own interaction with him when they evaluated him directly and talked to him directly. So that seems kind of unprofessional and almost bush league if that's true. So I can't believe it's just that kind of rumor that gets around, and that's turned everyone off who might have drafted him higher. I mean, they all have to do their research on all of these players, and if there's a personality thing or something off field that is an issue, I mean, they factor that into where they grade him. So in this case, he's clearly a unique situation because nobody else has a over the top famous father who's famous in football and currently coaching in football with this big of a spotlight on him. So it's like, I mean, maybe they've all accounted for that. I would be surprised if that's a reason that they would actually not take him higher if they had him graded higher, like from proper football grades. They had him graded in the first, 1, 2, or 3, first, second, or third round. But then they're like, yeah, but we're not going to take him because his father's too famous and it's just going to be too much of a circus. And so they don't take him. I think that's what some people are suggesting is the case. That seems kind of weak if that's true. Like he either can play, he either fits your criteria of someone you think can play or not. And otherwise, I mean, I don't know. I mean, that would be unprecedented to do that, to not take a player just because they have a famous father who's currently coaching in college. And on the other hand, he might just not grade out that well, and maybe he'll just get taken tomorrow in one of the remaining rounds. And it doesn't really, and like we've said before, it doesn't matter what round you get taken in. You either get your shot or you don't. And if you get your shot, even if you're an undrafted free agent, as long as you get a shot and you can prove to them you can play at the next level, you'll eventually get on the field and you'll play. Brady's obviously the ultimate example. He was a 6th round pick and he ended up becoming the greatest of all time. I always refer to the Brock Purdy pick. I mean, they traded away the farm for Trey Lance, and Purdy at the very last pick ended up being the one who saved the franchise and has already been to the NFC Championship game twice in his first 3 years and the Super Bowl. So it just doesn't matter where someone gets picked. It matters what they do with the opportunity once they have it. So at this point, I got a little note here. So at this point, Cam Ward, Jackson Dart, Tyler Shough, Jalen Milroe, and Dylan Gabriel have all been taken ahead of him. But I mean, you could make the argument that each one of these guys they've had significant success. I mean, Cam Ward was pretty successful everywhere he went. He went to 3 different teams and constantly getting to a bigger team with stiffer competition. So he put up good numbers at Washington State and good numbers at Miami. Same with Jackson Dart, playing in the SEC. Tyler Shough, he's been around for a while. I think he's a beneficiary of the COVID year, so he had extra years of eligibility. And I think but he got through a brutal injury. And this final year in Louisville is when he really showed that he's got something. Also, he has your prototypical NFL body, and he's got a strong arm. So I can see how GMs and coaches they like the 6'5", 225. He just looks the part. He looks like the big bodied NFL quarterback, whereas Shedeur's not quite that big and his arm's not quite as strong as Shough's. And then Jalen Milroe is the overwhelming physical gifted like the upside there is through the roof. He's bigger, stronger, and faster than everybody on the field whenever you see him play. It's just whether or not he can actually achieve his potential. So the knock on him is he could turn into another Anthony Richardson, but the upside is so enticing when you see Jalen Milroe play that it's almost like you got to take a shot on that. There's just too much physical gifts there to ignore. So it's understandable why he has already been taken. And then Dylan Gabriel has played, 65 games in college and he's always had a winning record. If you just watch the film on him, he's a winner. He just wins everywhere he goes, at all levels, at Oklahoma, at what was it, UCF, at Oregon. Like he's played against legitimate competition and he's beat just about everybody. So there's every reason to think he has a legitimate shot at working out in the NFL. I would say he's sort of similar to Bo Nix, just with a lot of experience, a lot of games under his belt. So you could come up with a very rational argument as to why these guys have been taken before Shedeur. Shedeur's played at a much smaller college, and then he played 2 years at Colorado. One of those years, they only won 4 games, and then the last year they finally won 9 games. And so the sample size of him playing at the power conference level is 2 years, one losing a bunch of games and the other one finally winning. So it's, and I'm not saying you have to have multiple years at the power 5 level, power 4, whatever, how many conferences there are now, winning multiple winning seasons, but you can, it's totally reasonable. And you could easily come up with a reason why these 5 guys got picked before him, and none of it's unreasonable why they got picked before him. And I wouldn't be surprised if Quinn Ewers goes before him as well. So, but what we were and Kyle McCord. I mean, Kyle McCord lit it up at Syracuse, and he also played a year at Ohio State. So you could say Kyle McCord's experience has been against better talent than anything Shedeur Sanders has played against so far. So it's, you could just make the argument that all these guys just have a better resume. That's all. There's nothing else to it. But all of this controversy is because of his name. I mean, hell, I'm doing this video right now because the goddamn NFL Network's broadcast would not shut up about him. It was almost like this was the Shedeur Sanders 2025 NFL draft. And it was almost like disrespectful to all the other players that they spent so much time talking about him. And every time a player got taken, the analysts were like, "Oh, well, I don't know what's going on." I mean, I had to change it to change it to ABC. I mean, they were better. They still started doing it, but the NFL one was just unbearable. It was terrible how often they made it sound like this was only about him. So, and I'm sure they were told to do that, and maybe it's good for ratings. I mean, I don't know. I'm talking about him right now, but I mean, let me know what you guys think. He's obviously he's got something to him. Like some of the, I mean, lots of analysts thought he had something to him. So I can't imagine that the analysts themselves were just falling for the Sanders name. I'm sure they could separate out the spectacle of who he is and the spectacle of who Deion is, and just analyze his performance. If you guys watch me enough, you know that I follow JT O'Sullivan for all of his analysis, and he did all of Shedeur's last year. And he said there's stuff there. There's the makings of a quarterback that's worth a shot. He didn't summarily dismiss him, but at the same time, I don't think he thought he was that much different than any of these guys. They all have shortcomings, and it's just whether or not their specific shortcomings either they can overcome them or minimize them to the point where they're effective players in the NFL. So you just don't know. Like, you just don't know how these guys are going to turn out. So I'm assuming he'll get picked somewhere in the next few rounds, but I don't think it's that big a deal. I think all of these players were essentially interchangeable, and you just never know. I mean, you just won't know until they get a shot in the NFL. So I don't know. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. We'll catch you later.